Empire.
It's getting crazy out here. We're coming down the home stretch, and we're breaking it all down and performing the autopsy of the New England Patriots season. What's up, everybody? It's Mike Jones. Thanks for coming back for another episode of the Football Jones podcast. You can read me at usatoday.com. Follow me on Twitter and Instagram at @ByMikeJones. And this was just a crazy week 15 in the NFL, especially what we saw on Sunday with the New York Jets getting their first win of the season, blowing the Trevor Lawrence sweepstakes and upsetting the LA Rams, who I thought was one of the best teams in the NFC. And then on Monday, we have the Steelers, who are supposedly one of the better teams in the AFC, losing to the Cincinnati Bengals. Not even close. I'm just a lot of crazy stuff. And also a break from the norm. Bill Belichick's Patriots were unable to pull off his normal embarrass and abuse a rookie quarterback bit like he normally does. They lose to Tua and the Miami Dolphins. Just a wild week of action here in Week 15 as the NFL is coming down the home stretch. We've been saying it. It's going to be an intriguing postseason here, and it's hard to tell where things are going, but it just doesn't get any better than this. You can't make this stuff up. It's fantastic football, fantastic entertainment, and we're getting to the bottom of it. Look, as far as the Jets go, I know a lot of Jets fans are really upset and want to know why in the world they would win that game and ruin their chance of getting Trevor Lawrence, who is supposed to be a generational talent at quarterback and a guy to turn your franchise around. Well, I mean, the answer is simple. Players don't give a crap about draft picks. They're veterans. They're fighting for their jobs and their pride. This coaching staff at entering that game at, 0-13, they're probably not going to be here next year either. They're coaching. They don't want 0-16 attached to their resume. They also are coaching for their futures. So when it comes to draft picks in a situation like that, they're like, not my problem. These players, they're trying to win. The coaches are fighting, to win as well. These guys have a lot of pride, and it's a great consolation prize, but they want no parts of 0-16, and that's why they went out there and took it to the Rams. And maybe the Rams had looked past them, and it took them falling into a 20-3 hole before they could rally and come back, and fell short. But you can't take anybody lightly, because all these guys, as inept as they may seem, they do have pride. In Cincinnati, I tell you, man, they really made the Steelers look really bad. I mean, scoreless at halftime, a 17-0 lead at halftime. At the time, 2-10-1 Cincinnati Bengals against the 11-2 Steelers. Look, we know the Steelers are wobbling a little bit, but I really felt like they were going to take care of business here. Losing to Washington, who has got a great defense, is one thing. We saw that as they lost to a team with a losing record. But the Bengals, man, that's a team that hasn't really been able to get out of its way very much, and that just can't happen. I'm curious, okay, is Mike Tomlin going to be able to get this team back on track for the postseason, or is this going to be a one-and-done team? Look, I know they've had a lot of injuries, and their defense is built around linebacker play, and so that really hurts, but their offense has got some real issues here. And I don't know. This is not the direction you want to be trending as December winds down. Not at all. Another intriguing game of the week was the Cleveland Browns. I felt like they probably could win this game. We know the Giants are desperate and everything, but just you got to take hats off to Kevin Stefanski. First-year head coach, comes in there, changes the culture, which these guys were trying to trend in a positive way, but he did more and has really turned this team into a winner. 10 wins for the first time since 2002. They're about to make the playoffs for the first time since 2007. Baker Mayfield, people were talking, is he a bust? He just, and he looked like just a game manager to start the year, but in the second half of the season, he's balling out, playing very well. So hats off to Kevin Stefanski, probably the guy for Coach of the Year in my book. And also another intriguing game was the Saints and the Chiefs. The Chiefs win that game 32-29. The game really wasn't that close. I never felt like the Chiefs were not in control. Definite rust from Drew Brees as he came back from fractured ribs. I don't know about the Saints. I feel like they're still one of the better teams in the NFC, but they've got injuries at the wide receiver position. I just don't know if they have enough to make a deep run. The last several years, they've had disappointing exits, and, give them credit that they, despite being on a bad day, they were able to hang with the Chiefs. But again, it just never felt that close. So I don't know. This NFC is wide open, and we're going to see how this thing shakes out. But we do know there will not be any sort of postseason for the New England Patriots. They are about to have a losing season here. They suffered their, 8th loss, losing to Miami. They've got 2 games left. I shouldn't say they will have a losing season, but chances, it looks like they probably are. And so we're going to break it all down. I've got my buddy Ben Volin from the Boston Globe. He has been on the podcast before, knows the team inside and out, and can really just tell us, what went wrong. The way this team started out, I felt like, hey, perfect marriage, Cam Newton, Bill Belichick. Bill Belichick's such a great coach. He's going to coach these young guys up despite having a lot of older guys that had opted out for COVID or left via free agency. They still were going to squeak their way into the playoffs. Well, nope, that's not happening. Not happening. And so now we are going to get to it with Ben Volin.
Hey there. The holidays are here, so it's good to know Kroger can save you some time with free pickup on all your fresh favorites. Whether your traditions call for a hearty helping of juicy ham, ample apple pie, or Aunt Sue's legendary twice-stuffed stuffing, Kroger has got you covered. So order for free pickup at Kroger.com or the app and get more time to get your holiday on when you grab your groceries curbside. Kroger, fresh for everyone. Free pickup on orders of $35 or more. Restrictions may apply.
It's almost that time when you put your name in a grid and hope that your box hits the final score. But you don't have to wait until February to start winning. With Boxes, you can play box pools every day for every game. Boxes is completely free to play, and you win big. Fans who download the app at the App Store or go to boxes.com, that's BOXIZ.com, and use my code BALL20 can enter our contest, where the lucky winner with the final score to the Colts-Steelers game will receive $100. We'll have new games every week and incredible prizes in the playoffs, and for the big game, that will include tickets to games next year when fans can finally return in 2021. So go to boxes.com for more info or download the app now. BOXIZ. Use the code BALL20 when you sign up and when you enter our contest for the Indy-Pittsburgh game. It's free for you and your friends to get in and win. Boxes. It's anyone's game. Okay, and he's back. Our buddy Ben Volin from up in Patriots land, senior NFL writer for the Boston Globe. We're here to bury the dead. Ben, just what has this year been like? We talked early in the year after that early playoff exit, and I know you said it was weird to be done with the season, early in January. Now you know that you're not even going to be covering a playoff game. So what is this feeling like? And had you seen this coming, or did you kind of think they would squeak out a postseason appearance at some point this season?
Thanks for having me on, Jonesy. And yeah, it's bizarre. This is the first time since 2008 that the Patriots haven't even won their division or made the playoffs. Only the fourth time under Bill Belichick in 21 years that they've missed the playoffs, 2000, 2002, 2008, and then this year. So it's just been a very strange year for the Patriots all the way around, no question. Now, yeah, I was surprised, though, that they didn't make the playoffs. I predicted them as a 9-7 team before the season. I thought they would squeak out a playoff berth. And even as the season started, they started 2-1. They beat the Dolphins. They beat the Raiders. And then even week 4, they had Brian Hoyer starting against the Chiefs. They actually played the Chiefs pretty strong that night. And so, you're feeling pretty good about the Patriots. Like, they might have something here with Cam Newton. Belichick, can always coach these guys up. But then Newton got COVID right around that time, and it really threw the team for a loop. And they've just been inconsistent all year. They've never been able to kind of figure out their talent on offense. And now you see the defense is really starting to slide back as well. On paper, this is really, I think, the worst roster in the NFL. Just very little talent on offense. Receiver, a bunch of undrafted free agents. Tight end is just a complete black hole. I believe they have the least amount of production from tight end in the NFL. And then Cam Newton is just a shell of himself. His arm strength is not there. His accuracy is very scattershot. He's not seeing the field. And it's a tough situation for him coming into a new offense, no preseason, no training camp, really, no off season. So obviously not an easy situation for him, but they're what are they, 6-8 right now, missing the playoffs. That's what they are. That's what they're supposed to be. And frankly, Belichick, probably got more out of this talent than what they have on paper. I don't know if this is a 6-win team on paper. So in that sense, I think there is some hope for the future that if they can just add some more pieces on offense, they should be back in the mix. That said, they still have a lot of rebuilding to go. And I think Belichick probably has at least one more year of rebuilding, if not 2, to get them back to being a real championship caliber team. So just a kind of a lame duck season for the Patriots. They're moving on to the new era. Belichick did not spend any money in free agency, and it showed this year. And being 6-8 and out of the playoffs is frankly where they deserve to be.
What happened though? I mean, how did they go from that 2-1 start where we were like, oh, Cam is perfect. This is like a revival for him. Belichick's gonna show that, hey, I still got this. And just that, I mean, the COVID break, what do you know, or what do you hear? Like, what happened to Cam? I mean, because like Lamar Jackson had a COVID break. I mean, he came back and he was normal. Cam, just like you said, he looks like a shell of himself.
Yeah, it's unfortunate. I think a lot of it is physical. He's had the shoulder injuries over the years, and he's really laboring to throw the ball. And look, let's be honest, September can be kind of a mirage. The first month of the season, especially with no preseason games. Credit to the Patriots for beating the Dolphins and for beating the Raiders, but I feel like that's not really who the teams were back then. And as the season progresses and as defenses have gotten more film on Cam, they've just been compressing the field and daring him to beat them deep, and he just can't do it right now. And look, to be fair to Cam, he has maybe the worst set of weapons in the NFL, and we would always make excuses for Tom Brady. Well, what do you expect? He doesn't have the receivers. And I think, to be fair, we have to say that for Cam Newton also. He just doesn't have any weapons out there. They have a decent running game and a decent offensive line, but just nothing at tight end, and a bunch of number 3 receivers on the roster. So he doesn't have too much. But the COVID break really hurt him. He missed one game, and then they had to push games back, and so he had to go 2 or 3 weeks without even practicing. And look, Tom Brady can do that. Even Lamar Jackson, his 3rd year in that offense, he can do that. I don't think Cam, where he's at in his career and how new he is to the Patriots, could really afford to miss all that practice. I think it really set him back. That said, the Patriots were winning games, and it's just the last couple of weeks where they've really fallen apart. And it's not just the offense, it's the defense too. They allowed 180 rushing yards to the Rams. They let the Dolphins run for 250 on them last week. Just inexcusable breakdowns on defense. And so the whole team has just kind of collapsed now as the season hits the key stretch. And we're not used to seeing that from a Bill Belichick team. Usually they get better as the season progresses. They were on that track for a while, but just the last few weeks, they've completely fallen apart. You have an offense that can't score touchdowns. They're just settling for field goals. And you have a defense that can't stop the run. So it's a bad roster. And Belichick is trying to make chicken, salad out of chicken scratch. And it hasn't gone well right now. So they just need to add talent. They need to hit the draft. Their drafting has been abysmal the last few years. They have no pipeline of offensive talent. They have not developed any receivers. N'Keal Harry, their first-round pick, is running number 3 right now behind undrafted guys. They really need to start hitting on some draft picks because you go back and look at their draft record over the last 5 years. It's cover your eyes awful. It's really bad. So that's really where it needs to start moving forward.
Why do you think that is? Because Belichick is so meticulous with everything. Why can't they draft well? And wide receiver especially, they just have not been able to ever really identify talent there in recent years. Can you put your finger on what it is that causes them to struggle so bad at that position? And like you said, as a whole in the draft, given just the way that he leaves no stone uncovered when it comes to game planning and preparation. But that's really an important piece of building a team, especially if you're not going to spend huge in free agency.
No question. And, it's a couple of things. First of all, over the last maybe 4 or 5 years, especially with Brady, they were an older, more veteran team going for Super Bowls every year. And they kind of punted on the draft a few years. They traded a lot of their picks. Projecting guys from college to the pros is a crapshoot, as we all know. And the Patriots, where they were at, there were a couple of years where they really just kind of punted on the draft. And so I get that. Okay. They haven't really taken many swings, especially at receiver. They took N'Keal Harry in the first round last year, and that was the first time Belichick ever used a first-round pick on receiver, and it was 32. So it was basically a borderline second-round pick. And before him, they hadn't used a top pick on a receiver since Aaron Dobson in 2013. So they went 6 years without really drafting a guy high. And part of their struggles at finding and developing receivers is how complicated the offense is. They ask a lot of their receivers to be able to read coverages and be on the same page with the quarterback and make adjustments mid-route. And I think you hear that a lot from guys when they come to the Patriots. It's like, calculus, AP calculus. And a lot of offenses now are a lot simpler, and it makes the transition easier for these guys from college to the pros. And I think there's something to that with the Patriots. They just bury them with so much information. They don't play as fast. They're thinking too much. And, we'll see with N'Keal Harry. He's starting to make some plays here at the end of his second season. Tough kind of go for him his first 2 years, where he spent half of his rookie year on IR, and then he tries to join the team midstream. And then his second year, he doesn't get an off season or a real training camp. So I'd like to see what he can do next year. And I'm not ready to write him off yet. But I just wonder if the scheme is too complicated, and they just need to simplify things moving forward. We'll see what happens with Josh McDaniels in this year's hiring cycle. But, I think they might need to, maybe join the rest of the NFL in simplifying the offense and moving to some more college-style principles to help develop some of these receivers and make things easier on offense. Again, to their credit, they've developed Julian Edelman in the 7th round. He has been a great find, but and they found an undrafted rookie in Jacoby Myers. He's been a nice find. He had 100 yards the other day in their loss, but they just haven't been able to draft and develop. And I think the offense is a little too complicated. So I want to see what they do in that sense this offseason.
What have you thought of the work that McDaniels has done? Because it's clear. I mean, like, you see parts where, okay, he can scheme these receivers open, from like maybe the 20 to the 20, but then in the red zone, I mean, they don't have a lot of touchdown passes. What is it, like 4 or 5, touchdown passes, something like that, better than me, but they just don't. Is that like a lack of imagination on his part? I mean, we see like them run the ball several times in the red zone without taking a shot. Is that because guys can't win because they don't trust Cam's arm? What is it? And again, what do you think of how he has done in helping Newton and these receivers this year? And was it just Brady kind of making him look good?
I mean, obviously Brady's going to make everyone look good. Again, the same excuses I was making for Cam Newton, I think also apply to Josh McDaniels. What does he have to work with here? I mean, the tight end room, their number one tight end was this kid, Ryan Izzo, who was picked 250 in the draft a few years ago. And he's a blocking tight end and a special teams guy. Then they had two rookies who, they just contributed nothing this year. Wide receiver, what does McDaniels have to work with? Cam Newton, a shell of himself, new to the system, doesn't have much throwing strength or accuracy. So I think you kind of have to give McDaniels somewhat of a pass there. I give him credit for completely kind of changing a lot of the offense around Cam Newton, having a mobile style quarterback now. They've utilized his feet pretty well, and they've got a good running game considering they have almost no passing attack. They're still, I believe, a top 5 rushing attack, and they've done well this year. What you referenced, Cam down in the red zone, I think it was 2 games ago against the Rams. They just ran the ball 4 straight times along the goal line. Twice was just Cam keepers. And that's been pretty successful for them. They've actually been a really good short yardage rushing team this year, and Cam has really been a big part of that. So I understand why they would do that, but it's also a sign that they don't trust Cam's arm and his decision making and along the goal line. They think it's just, let's just ram it up the middle 4 times and see what we can do. And it's actually been fairly, successful for them this year. But McDaniels clearly just doesn't have a whole lot of faith in Newton's passing ability and his ability to see the field and make the right throws. That said, so I give McDaniels a pass in that sense, but it's not like he's set the world on fire either. I mean, the Patriots are like 28th in scoring. So, it's been an okay coaching job. It hasn't been great. They haven't gotten more out of their talent, but, it's not like he's working with a bunch of all pros out there either. I don't think it should affect how we think of him too much. I think he's still a very good offensive coach. His name's going to be coming up in the hiring cycle now. I still don't know, the teams that want a guy who can develop a quarterback, an offensive style coach, there's so many good options out there.
Right.
He's got a couple of red flags with the Denver experience and then what he did with Indianapolis. So I just don't think he's going to be the hottest name out there again. I wonder if maybe the Bucs, if they move on from Bruce Arians and Brady wants to bring in his own guy, that might be a decent opportunity for McDaniels. But I just, for the hiring, I don't downgrade him for what he's done this year. I just don't know if he's going to be the hottest candidate just because of the other black marks that are on his record right now.
Yeah. So, I meant to ask you, when you're talking about not spending in free agency, back during free agency, we did not know that COVID was going to have the impact that it had here. Did Belichick kind of punt because he sensed this? Or did he just know, we've got to get some better draft picks. So it's better for us to kind of take our lumps this year, have some better building blocks to build with next year. Or what do you think went into their thinking of not kind of giving, they didn't know who their quarterback was going to be at the time, but even if it was going to be Jarrett Stidham, you want to surround a young guy with talent, veterans to kind of help lighten the load on him. They didn't do that. Why do you think it was that they were so kind of stingy in free agency?
That's a great question. And you're right. And I actually wrote this earlier this year, and it's like, why do the Patriots not have talent? Well, they didn't try. They haven't gone out in free agency and even offered guys, and they didn't try to sign any receivers or tight ends, and they just sat out. And it's been that way for a couple of years now. And I think Belichick definitely felt this year he's going to be taking his lumps. And I don't know if it's because of COVID or just whatever, first year post Brady. But this was really interesting. It was about mid-season, and Belichick, Mr. No Days Off and do your job, went on the radio and in press conferences and was making excuses about, well, we had to get the salary cap in order, and we just didn't have the money this year. And it's like, come on, Bill, you're better than that. You could have found the money to spend if you wanted to. Your cap situation wasn't that bad. But that's what they've done. They basically used this year to clear the books, not only with the salary cap, but with the cash as well. Mm-hmm. Last year they had one of the higher spending teams. And so this year they're one of the lowest spending teams with cash, but they never really mortgaged the future. And they could have spent money this year if they wanted to, but they decided to sit it out. And so they're getting their books in order, and they're playing some of their draft picks. You know, they use a lot of their draft picks on defense this year. It's all about rebuilding the defense. They got Kyle Duggar, a safety who's looked really good, and Anthony Jennings and Josh Uche, a couple of linebackers who have played a lot of snaps recently and are starting to develop nicely. So they're getting some playing time for some young guys, but they're not struggling this year because of the cap. They're struggling because they purposely chose to sit it out. And that can't go on for another year. They've got to spend some money. They need to bring in some receivers and tight ends, and they need to really bolster that offense, especially. Get whoever the quarterback is, get him some weapons. You know, they have a bunch of receivers right now who are all number 3s. So they need to get a number 1 guy, you know, whether it's a Juju Smith-Schuster or, you know, signing a tight end like Hunter Henry. Like, they just need to get legit NFL top end weapons for whoever's going to be the quarterback next year. And I think they will. Their cap situation's pretty good. They haven't spent any money this year, so they should have plenty to spend next year. And so I think they need to do kind of a blend of continuing to draft and develop, but also signing a few free agents and just adding to the overall talent here on the roster. But yeah, Belichick was making excuses, and we never hear that from him. So and he got crushed. I mean, no one was buying. Not one person was buying what he was selling, and you haven't heard him make those excuses since then. But you know, they've sat it out. They sat on their hands this year, and this is what they are now, a 6-8 team that's not going to the playoffs.
Yeah. Okay, so do you see any way that Cam is back here as the quarterback?
So I actually do. I think there is a chance that he's back next year. He's not the future, but if they need a seat warmer, I think he's a decent chance. Belichick loves him. I mean, Belichick and McDaniels have just raved about Cam Newton any opportunity they've gotten this year, and not necessarily about his play, but just his demeanor and how much he's bought in and how he really is the first guy there and the last guy to leave, and they just love his work habits and how he's all in. And Newton's been a great teammate this year, and he's been great in press conferences. So even if they do draft a kid, Belichick doesn't seem like the guy who's just going to hand the starting job to a rookie.
Right.
So I could definitely see Cam back as a seat warmer. No, and again, look, maybe he has a full off season and he's got a year in the system, and maybe they think he can be better next year, but he's not the future. And I think this year was kind of figuring out, can Cam be the quarterback for the next 4 or 5 years? And they would be crazy if they built around that. Right. So they've got to find a quarterback, first round, second round, somewhere in there. I could see Belichick going position player in the first round because they're probably picking in the middle of the draft, but they've got to invest in the quarterback. And, you know, the last question you asked me, I talked about how they didn't try. Well, they haven't tried a quarterback. Yeah. The year they traded away Jimmy Garoppolo, they didn't draft anyone. Brady left, they didn't draft anyone. The only guy they've taken is Jarrett Stidham in the 4th round. And look, 4th rounders are not guys that you're expecting to be franchise quarterbacks. So they've got to try. They've got to get off their hands and their tushes, and they've got to draft a quarterback this year and actually develop a kid. So I could see Cam being back, but he's not the future here. But, you know, he could be a decent option as a bridge quarterback, certainly.
Gotcha. Tell me if I'm crazy about this scenario here. Okay. They go out in free agency. They spend, they restock, they get the guys back who had opted out because of COVID, and they call Kyle Shanahan and find a way to get Jimmy Garoppolo back. Is that crazy?
I don't think that's crazy. No, I don't think that's crazy at all. The Niners are kind of in limbo with Garoppolo. He's going to cost them $25 million next year, which isn't like outlandish for a quarterback. He's going to be ranked, I think, the 12th highest paid quarterback. So that's not insane, but you know, it's all about what's your better option. And if they feel like, you know, with their draft position that they could land a kid and he's going to be a lot cheaper, you know, a rookie quarterback might make only $7 or $8 million next year. So yeah, I could definitely see that. And, you know, if you're the Patriots, you're a little bit concerned with Garoppolo's injury history. And I don't know if you can count on him to start 16 games, but I think he'd be a perfect quarterback for the next 2 or 3 years. A guy who knows the system, another guy that Belichick absolutely loves and you know, loves his work habits and everything. And he's a veteran. He's taken his team to a Super Bowl, and he can kind of continue the Patriot way and be a locker room leader type, you know, and help bridge the gap from Brady to the next era. So I think Garoppolo would be great. Even if the Patriots had to trade for him and take on his contract, I think they could do that. like I said, 25 million isn't outlandish. It comes with no dead money. So I definitely think that that's in the cards, and it really is going to depend on whether San Francisco decides that they have a better option than Garoppolo. There's also talk, should the Patriots look at like Matt Ryan if he shakes free, or Matt Stafford? I don't know if I'd want those guys, but to me, Jimmy G is very intriguing. And yeah, if San Francisco decides they're done with him, I think the Patriots are absolutely a landing spot.
Yeah, well, this is what I have happening. Because I am pulling all
Got your crystal ball out there.
Yeah, exactly. I've got Matt Ryan going to San Francisco, and they draft somebody. Jimmy G goes to New England. Carson Wentz goes to Indianapolis, and everybody's quarterback situations are all taken care of. So
it's a great game of musical chairs. I like your thinking.
Right.
The salary cap is it could be a thorn in the side, because like the Falcons just gave Ryan a big contract, and they'd have to kill their salary cap to get rid of him, and the Eagles would have to kill their salary cap to get rid of Carson Wentz. So I wonder if both teams since they've invested so much in those guys, if they're just going to be stuck with them for one more year and try to make it work. But I mean, I like your thinking there, and all those moves make a lot of sense. And Matt Ryan was an MVP under Kyle Shanahan a few years ago and took his team to the Super Bowl. So it definitely makes sense. The only thorn is just the salary cap stuff. But
we're gonna hire like the best experts and everything, and like figure out how to crunch those numbers and massage everything. So, we won't worry about rational thinking when it comes to the salary cap. So, okay, what has that locker room? Lastly, what has it been like? You've got high quality guys, high character guys, leaders in that locker room. How have they handled the frustration, the disappointment of this year, just not being what they're used to?
Certainly it's unusual for them especially to have two meaningless games at the end instead of gearing up for the playoffs. I mean, this is, for a guy like Devin McCourty, all he knows is playoffs and Super Bowls and success. So this is very strange for them. It is a little bit hard to get the temperature of the locker room because of COVID, and we're not in there around the guys. We're just getting Zoom calls with them. But, I guess we'll really see these next 2 weeks how they're approaching it. Is Belichick just going to give guys, reps, and let's see what Stidham can do, and let's play the young guys, or are they going to go for wins? I do think there's been a lot of character. Newton has been very high character this year. The guys love him. Mm-hmm. He's come up with nicknames for everyone. He's been I think a very positive presence in the locker room, and everyone seems to rally around him. They still do have a lot of leaders like Devin McCourty, Stephon Gilmore, who's actually probably now out for the season with his injury, David Andrews, Joe Thuney. You have a lot of veterans with a lot of pride. So, you have guys who are still going to be giving their all and are true professionals here. And I don't think you're going to be seeing, any sort of tank job or anything like that, or guys just completely, laying down for the final 2 games. But, there's obviously disappointment, and there's probably going to be a lot of change this offseason. They do have a lot of free agents. Is Thuney going to be gone? Julian Edelman, what's his future going to be? Changes at quarterback. So there could be a lot of changes coming up. But I still think you have a good veteran locker room there and some good leaders. And guys look up to Devin McCourty, and he'll be back next year. And, you hope Hightower and Patrick Chung come back. Those are 2 key pieces and 2 leaders. And maybe this year has been good for other guys to kind of develop their voices too. Maybe it's been good for the rookies to be able to take on more responsibility, and a guy like Chase Winovich, a second-year player, to have a bigger voice, and Joe Thuney maybe taking more of a leadership role, and David Andrews. So maybe it's been good for them in that sense. But, ultimately it's still disappointment, and no one wants to be in this situation, having meaningless games the last two games of the season. So a lot of disappointment, but I think you'll see a lot of professionalism out of the Patriots too.
Good deal. Well, Ben, I really appreciate your time. This has been great. It's going to be fascinating to see what the off season looks like and just where the Patriots are this time next year. But tell everybody where they can find you.
Please read my work on bostonglobe.com. And if you want to buy a subscription, that'd be even better. Yep. And please follow me on Twitter at Ben Volin.
All right. Sounds good. Check them out, everybody. Ben, thank you so much, man. And I'll see you sometime. Normally we're hanging out at Senior Bowl, Combine, seeing each other, playoffs, and who knows. But it's good to see you on here.
You too, buddy. Thanks for having me.
All right. All right, I hope you guys have a great day. Happy holidays to you and your family. Thanks as always for listening. Do me a favor, please. Share this podcast with some friends. Post it on your social media, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. Tell some people about it as you're enjoying it. Share the love. Go on there. Leave me a rating and a quick little review. Only takes a few seconds, but it helps out a lot. And again, you can read me at usatoday.com. Follow me on Twitter at @ByMikeJones and on Instagram at @ByMikeJones. And I will talk to you guys again next time.